Hi, I'm going to talk to you about servicing a R-10 HuMa regulator. Basically, if you are experiencing issues with your regulator, you may find that the power is increasing as the bottle pressure is decreasing, or you may be getting a leak out of this little, there's a little bleed hole in there. Or if your rifle's really inconsistent. Obviously there's a lot of reasons, possible reasons for inconsistency, but if you've narrowed it down to the regulator, then this is how you service it. You're going to need a flat-bladed screwdriver, and you don't have to have a bolt, but an M5 bolt is quite handy. An O-ring pick of some description, something to remove O-rings, and if you go to the second stage of this video, you're going to need a vernier or some other way of accurately measuring the part that I'll show you. So basically what you want to do is obviously depressurize the rifle, and then remove the regulator, basically following the same system that you used to fit the regulator, and you can unscrew the back. This shouldn't be ridiculously tight, but if it is, you can use, you could wrap a bit of leather or something around the back and then use something to loosen it off. Obviously don't go too mad, because you don't want to damage it. So there we go, that's the steel cap out the way, and then you can replace the O-rings by picking them off and then fitting the new O-rings from the kit that I sell, and then to service the piston, you can use your M5 bolt, screw that in, and then basically use the bolt to pull the piston out, and you'll notice that there are a number of disc springs, or bevel washers as they're also called, on the regulator piston. Please make a note of which way around they go. They do get stacked differently depending on the pressure range that the regulator works in, and it is also possible that the disc springs are different sizes, and the only way you would know for sure is to either inspect them with your eyes if you've got good eyes, or to actually measure them. So in this case they are both the same size, because this is set for high pressure, and there are two discs that face that way, two that face that way, and then the last two that face that way. And you'll notice there's an O-ring on the front of the piston and an O-ring on the back of the piston. Again, use your pick to carefully remove the O-rings without scratching the surfaces, because obviously if you scratch them, the O-ring's not going to seal properly. And make sure that it's all clean inside there. I would recommend using some airgun lube or ABS M50 on the O-rings, just to give them a bit of lube. You can also put a light coat of the lube on the inside of the regulator, just to keep everything smooth and working as it should. Make sure that there are no hairs, fluff, fibers, or any other kind of dirt on the O-rings before you reassemble. And get your bolt out the way, and then you can screw the cap back on. Right, now this next bit, I normally, if you've watched on my older videos, I recommend that you don't adjust this or play with this end, because this is where the actual regulator pressure is adjusted or set, and adjusting this obviously changes the regulator pressure, and changing the regulator pressure will change how the rifle works. So if you do want to replace the O-ring on this adjuster, I highly recommend that you use an accurate means of measurement. In this case I'm using a digital vernier, and I'm using the depth gauge to see how deep this brass adjuster is in from the back of the regulator. So 1.61 millimeters, and I'm going to double check it or triple check it just to make sure, because it is critical. 1.63, Right, 1.61. So when we put this back together, we need to be aiming for 1.61 exactly. Right, so I'm going to unscrew this now using my flat bladed screwdriver. Right, there we go. As you can see, there's an O-ring on this adjuster. Again, use your pick to remove that carefully without causing any damage to the O-ring groove. Put a drop of lube on the O-ring and fit the new O-ring from the kit. You'll also notice that there's a white disc inside here, which is the that's the seal that seals on. There's a little, if you see, there's a little, like a little, I guess you'd call it a nipple, childish giggle there, that seals on that seal. So obviously keep that in good condition. Don't bang it on anything or drag it around on your workbench or whatever. And then that's your seal. If you want to, you can have a look at your seal, inspect it. If there is a deep indent where this tip has worked its way into the surface of the seal, you can flip the seal around so that it starts afresh on the other side of the seal. So anyway, make sure you drop that back in, make sure it's nice and flat, and then you pop your adjuster in with the new O-ring on it and tighten that up. And I'm just going to eyeball this. I'm probably going to need to go deeper, remembering that we need to go in 1.61 millimeters on this particular regulator. Not every regulator, everyone's different. Well, that was a pretty close. That's 1.57. So we need to go in a tiny bit more. .60. 1.60, so it needs to go in a tiny bit more, and then check it again. 1.61. Okay, I'm happy with that. And now again, just make sure that there's no dirt or fluff or anything anywhere on any of the O-rings, and refit it to the regulator block so that you can try it out. Obviously, anytime you work on your rifle, not just on the regulator, but anytime you do any work on the mechanics of your rifle, you need to check and possibly adjust the power of the rifle, because a small adjustment, even if you don't know that you're making an adjustment, can have an influence on the actual power output of the rifle. If you don't have power limits, don't worry about it, but if you in a country that has strict power limits, double check your power anytime you do any kind of work on your rifle. So there we go, that's servicing the regulator.